So let's go through one of my classes and just kind of see where there might be accessibility gaps. Things when we build a class that we may be utilizing are the pages in Canvas, different types of attachments, the quizzes, discussion boards, and videos. So this is one of my modules in my class, and the course starts out with a discussion board with a video. Now this discussion board here, I have embedded a video, and that video is closed caption, so that it brings me to a point where I have anything I put in this discussion board, just making sure that I use proper headings and making sure if I use equations, I'm using math type, not the equation editor, and then that way it's actually going to be accessible for my students. So one of the main pieces I use in Canvas are pages. In this case, I have an objectives page at the start, and I have my appropriate headings. I just have some bullets, and I do have different links, hyperlinks, and they're not the long HTTPS or anything like that. I actually link them within where it makes sense. And that's what will show up. So in this initial page, it's just some hyperlinks and headings I had to worry about. Now in each of my topics, I typically have a handout, a video, and then the homework. Now the handout, this I happen to have it as a separate attachment, and it's a docx file, and it comes up in the shorthand way here, but they can actually download it, and it is an accessible file. I created it using math type, and I have appropriate alt text on my image here. It's just one little image this time. So everything is accessible. It has appropriate headings on it. Everything's good. Now I had brought up the alternative formats. I want to bring that up again. This alternative formats, it has all these great formats for it, but unfortunately when I tried the EPUB and any of those, the electronic braille, I'm not sure, I don't know how to test that, but when I tried the EPUB, what came out actually did not, when I had a file that had math type and mathml, it did not render the mathml as readable. So I don't know if that's something that will be fixed later, but the alternative format did not work well when I was testing it with the reader. It could be user error, but so far I do not think that the Canvas alternative format was converting the mathml appropriately and getting it to where it was still fully accessible. So in that case, another format I sometimes put up for students is I sometimes have a link also to PDFs, and the PDF is fine to have as long as you also have an alternative format, and in this case the docx file serves that piece because it is completely accessible even though the PDF is not. And then as I've shown before in another video with the web page or EPUB that you can also create on your own is also an option to have that. I have a homework page, but that's just headings. That's something I already talked about. This Ask Questions page that I actually have does have a link to a Google Doc, and that Google Doc that I have, I do have to double check and make sure what I'm putting in there is accessible, and there is math type in Google Docs, but you still need a license for that. So if you link out to something else, so I'll click on this so you can see. So I link out to a Google Doc, that link to that Google Doc that I'm putting, it's out there outside of Canvas, I still have to make sure that is also accessible. So anything I type in there would still need to be utilizing math type. Now I also have a progress report that's just text, that's just an assignment that actually there's nothing mathematical in there. And then I have the quiz. Also, I will point out that the homework I have, everything I put in my homework, sometimes I put supplemental homeworks. Any link I have has to be accessible, or if I have an inaccessible link like the PDF link to the book, I have to have an accessible alternative, which is this online version. So always thinking about the accessible alternative. This video is captioned. This is a link to a video, but it is captioned. And lastly, when we look down at the bottom of my module, there is my quiz. And in the quiz, anything that I create, so if I just preview this quiz, all of these are created using MathType. So the quiz itself is also created in an accessible manner through Canvas. So looking through my module, just to reiterate the kind of things I want to look for, is anything I create needs to be accessible. Anything I reference within my module, whether it's within it, like my embedded video, or an external site, that also needs to be accessible or have an accessible format and equivalent alternative. So to wrap up, we looked at pages, different attachments, quizzes, discussion board, videos, and then the linking out to anything you should have an accessible alternative or just straight up link to an accessible item. So these are the places to kind of check for any gaps in your class. Will you be able to fix them all? No, maybe not, but this is something that to keep in mind of where the gaps can take place that you should be striving to fix and make sure you have a plan if it's not accessible. And right now, part of that plan can include using our accessibility department to help us make sure that if we have a gap, we can have help somehow filling that gap in.